Not too long ago I finished Persona 5. As a huge fan of the series, I was incredibly happy with all the improvements it had made from its predecessor Persona 4. While there were obvious improvements such as the stylish graphics and new additions to combat, Persona 5 also delivered on some that were not so overt. I'll be comparing Persona 5 and Persona 4, mainly showcasing the improvements and strengths of Persona 5. This is not to say I dislike Persona 4, I actually love it, but I gotta give credit where it's due, and Atlus did a great job with this sequel. A common complaint of the Persona franchise is their sluggish starts and how long they take to get going. In contrast to the meandering start of Persona 4, Persona 5 starts off with a bang. The jazzy OST blares to get you hyped up as you jump across chandeliers, all the while your future party members make witty quips and remarks as you familiarize yourself with the game's mechanics. The sense of urgency of an escape, coupled with Persona 5's oozing style and aesthetics, allows for a short but intense intro that does a great job of getting you into the game. After the hype dies down a bit and Joker is captured, the intrigue of who the traitor is in your party keeps you on your toes throughout the game as you analyze everything that's thrown at you throughout your playthrough. The added backstory of Joker also helps flesh him out, in contrast to Narukami from Persona 4, whose backstory is glossed over. Afterwards, when you go to school and approach the first dungeon, things go about as slow as Persona 4, but I feel a hands-on beginning like Persona 5 makes all the difference of keeping the player invested and having fun from the get-go. Dungeons are also an obvious improvement akin to gameplay and presentation, but I feel like having non-randomly generated dungeons makes all the difference. Gone are the days of walking down the dreary and desolate hallways of Persona 4. Persona 5's dungeons are a vibrant, dynamic experience that are one of the game's hallmarks. The scripted level design really shines, coupled with the game's presentation, and brings the dungeons to life. Even when the level design isn't particularly interesting, the atmosphere, OST, and aesthetics are enough to immerse you in the experience. Joker's thief motif-based movement abilities also add a dash of platforming and stealth sections that are usually forgone in JRPG experiences. Navigating dungeons in Persona has never been this fun, as Joker allows you to jump across and climb up objects, allowing you to traverse areas in exciting and unique ways. Being able to hop from shadow to shadow and lurk until the enemy is past you, only to jump them for a surprise attack, never ceases to give me a sense of player empowerment that the ambushes in Persona 4 were never able to give. Like Persona 4, the dungeons in Persona 5 are based on a character's heart, but in addition, a cardinal sin is involved to make things even more interesting. Each dungeon's environment is utilized to show how each sin is tied to each character. This is a cool motif in contrast to Persona 4 and makes for a unique reflection of these characters' hearts. To cap off dungeons, Persona 5 also makes each boss battle incredibly dynamic and makes them feel like a big event. To reform the antagonist of the dungeon, the party must steal their heart, which lies at the end of each dungeon, inevitably leading to an altercation with the boss as a result. To do so, they must send a calling card to the antagonist to make them aware of the party's presence. After sending the calling card outside of the dungeon, you return to Transformed, as the threat meter is maxed out and the typical dungeon crawling songs are replaced by Life Will Change, which is a remix of the OP. This is incredibly hype and adds a sense of meaning to these boss runs. The fact that the party's actions in the outside world affected the dungeon gives a sense of accomplishment and helps blend the high school life and dungeon crawling aspects of Persona 5's gameplay. A new mechanic in the boss battles allows you to send a party member to interact with the boss or environment to give you a leg up on the fight. This creates more memorable and dynamic battles, as sometimes the party member you choose even affects the outcome of the interaction. These changes create an incredible climax and payoff to each dungeon, making it feel much more like an experience rather than just a typical boss battle. Another big improvement I felt were in the social links, or confidence, in Persona 5. I always felt there was a bit of a disconnect between the dungeon crawling gameplay and the visual novel styled social links present in Persona 4. As you ranked up your social link in Persona 4, you'd be able to gain more experience when fusing a persona of the corresponding character's arcana, culminating at rank 10 where you'd be able to summon the arcana's ultimate persona. This provided a slight blend between gameplay and social links and helped explore the series' themes of bonds of people, but I always felt a bit of a detachment between the two. In addition to the arcana experience gained in Persona 4 social links, Persona 5's confidants give you access to various abilities and power-ups as you further your relationships. Most of these abilities have tremendous benefits, like Kawakami letting you go out at night, or Hifumi allowing you to swap out party members mid-battle. This adds much more incentive to carry out confidants and helps marry the dungeon crawling and visual novel aspects of Persona. The confidant giving the player character abilities also provides a cool two-way street between the player character and the confidant in terms of relationship. You're not just helping them, they're helping you, instead of the usual one-way feeling relationship in Persona 4 social links. This is further emphasized at the end of the confidant relationship. After learning about the confidant throughout each rank, at the end, they learn a bit about you as they piece together you're a member of the Phantom Thieves. This cool give-and-take relationship between the player and confidant is present in both a narrative and gameplay standpoint. Moving on to the story, I feel like Persona 5 mainly followed the template set by Persona 4 for the structure of its plot and events. However, I feel that Persona 5 fine-tuned this formula and fixed most of the problems I had with Persona 4's story and structure. This is not to say it's improved on every everything, however. Because Persona 5 follows Persona 4's template, it also inherits the game's poor pacing. In Persona 4, you flipped between being in either dungeon mode or slice of life mode, depending if there was a dungeon to progress or not. This segmented the game into long stretches of different gameplay types without much of a balance between the two. Persona 5 suffers from this more so, as it takes everything up to essentially 11. Everything about this game is bigger. The cutscenes and dialogue take longer, and the dungeons are massive. This increases the pacing issue by creating larger stretches of these two types of gameplay, leading to an even lesser balance. Next, we're moving into spoiler territory, so if you haven't beaten the game, I'd recommend finishing it if you don't want to get spoiled. Let's start with Akechi and Adachi. There's obviously a lot of similarities between these two. They both seem to be good characters who eventually are revealed to be major antagonists with a bit of a crazy side to them. I feel like the way Akechi was handled as a villain was overall better than Adachi. When Adachi was revealed to be a villain, there wasn't too much logic or reasoning behind it, and he was just an evil, crazy guy just for the sake of being an evil, crazy guy. With Adachi, we got what he wanted to do, but we never really got the why. With Akechi, while the reveal is very similar, and he is also shown to be some stereotypically evil, crazy anime dude, they at least tried to contextualize it. He was given actual reasoning for being upset with the world, and unlike Adachi, an actual goal, as Akechi wanted to get back at his father. Being able to see where Akechi is coming from goes a long way and doesn't make him feel undercut. I feel like the endgame for Persona 5 was handled better than 4 as well. Both games have a plot twist and subsequent true final dungeons after most of the main story has been concluded. In Persona 4, I feel like the plot twists like Izanami and Amino Sagiri weren't foreshadowed enough and they felt abrupt. Izanami was only mentioned once in non-voiced dialogue on the field trip to Gekkoukan High. I get that Persona 4's theme was about finding the truth and not going for the convenient answer, but it still feels out of left field and could have been handled better. Whereas the endgame events in Persona 5 were much easier to swallow as they were reasonably alluded to. Between Igor's different voice, the voice you could hear when you lied down in the Velvet Room, and Morgana's character progression. I was also a big fan of the somewhat more active role the party played in Persona 5 as to Persona 4. The party were able to piece together that Akechi was against them and beat him at his own game. Whereas in Persona 4, the party pretty much relied on Narukami to discover Adachi was the killer even though there was a detective in the group. And at the end of Persona 5, the party, along with your confidants, even go the extra mile to help prove Joker's innocence for his assault charge. Much like the confidant links in the game, it felt much more like that these relationships the player had were a two-way street, as they help you, rather than the player just helping everyone. I feel this is much more appropriate for a game series about bonds between people as its theme, and helps convey this component of Persona in its own special way. If you can't tell, I very much enjoyed Persona 5, and as a fan of previous installments, I was happy Atlus could deliver following the long wait after Persona 4. Feel free to let me know how you felt about Persona 5 in regards to 4, or let me know which Persona is your favorite. Even though I think Persona 5 is the best Persona game, I think my favorite would still be 3. This is only my second time making a video like this, so I'm sure it's still kinda rough around the edges, so if you have any constructive criticisms, let me know, as I'm thinking of making more videos like this in the future. And if you like what you saw, maybe consider sharing this video with someone who would be interested. Thanks for watching.